Alrighty, guys, let's talk a little bit about that first part of the Adventure of the Speckled Band. I want you to go to the assignment that says the Adventure of the Speckled Band clue sheet. And we can just start piecing together what we know so far in terms of setting this up. So I want to start here with the beginning when who's sitting in Sherlock Holmes's office? It's this woman right here. It is Helen Stoner. I know, get a good laugh out of her name right now, and we'll be done with it. Especially General Major Stoner, haha. But yeah, Helen Stoner shows up early in the morning at Sherlock Holmes's office, and it takes her a while to start talking about why she's there. But she does go through a history of her family. So let's just put that together. It turns out that her stepfather is a guy named Dr. Roylott. Dr. Roylott comes from the Roylott family, and she says, you know, this used to be a wealthy family in England. They had a huge estate, and back then, you would actually give properties names, right? So the name of the property, the name of the house and the land and everything is called Stoke Moran. So, you know, you might say, oh, I'm from Stoke Moran, and people would know that that's the big giant estate out in the country that is owned by the rich people. But Dr. Roylott is not rich, right? He says after 100 years or so, this rich family has become poor because there was a gambler who lost a lot of money. They mismanaged it quite a bit. And so by the time that the estate falls to Dr. Roylott, he has to go and get a job in India as a doctor. He actually borrows money from a relative to go to medical school, becomes a doctor, and goes out to India. Meanwhile, her own family, the Stoner family, also is well-to-do in British society, pretty rich. And her father is a guy named General Stoner, who is in the Bengal Artillery, right? So he's in the British Army stationed in India, and is married to her mom, Mrs. Stoner. Well, during some conflicts in India, her father dies, and her mom marries or remarries this Dr. Roylott. We're told then by Helen that Dr. Roylott ends up killing his butler. He did this because there was something stolen out of his house in India. And he either accused the butler, so it's not very clear, but he goes to prison for a little bit, and when he gets out, the family, Dr. Roylott, Mrs. Stoner, and then the twins, Helen and Julia, all go back to England. And then we leave off with the revelation that 2 years ago, Helen's twin sister, Julia, died. But that was 2 years ago. And she is just now, at Sherlock Holmes's office and bringing it up. And that's where we left off. So a couple interesting points here. One is that Dr. Roylott seems like a bad dude. He gets in fights. He's already killed somebody. Seems like a rough and tumble guy. Hangs out with gypsies. And he is also in charge of the money for the twin stepdaughters until the stepdaughters get married, right? So let's down here in character notes, let's put a couple things. What do we know about Dr. Roylott? So I'm going to type Dr. Roylott. Here's what we know. We know he's mean and unfriendly. We know he murdered his butler in India. Now, unfortunately, that's not the same thing back in the 1800s as murdering somebody in England. The law didn't see it that way, even though we would. But not a good guy. Let me take Dr. Roylott. I'm actually going to bold his name here so that sticks out. Let me just do that. What else do we know about Dr. Roylott? We know he controls the girl's money until they get married. We know his only friends. He hangs out with gypsies. So remember, a gypsy, you don't really hear about them much anymore, but they had a reputation of being thieves, outlaws, bandits. They would live in tents, go from town to town. Fortune telling, a fortune teller comes from the tradition of gypsies. Often they had a reputation for like spying kids. So a family couldn't feed a kid, they might sell them to the gypsies, and then the gypsies would train that kid for pickpocketing or whatever. So a whole crowd, like the wrong crowd. What else do we know about Dr. Roylott? He was sad, morose. He is an aristocratic, which means, of the upper society, an aristocrat, pauper, or a poor person. Oops, I misspelled aristocratic. So you have a rich, poor person, if that makes sense. He's in that world, but he doesn't have that money. All right, let's talk about Helen. What do we know about Helen? We know she's scared. That's why she's here in Sherlock Holmes' office. And that's about all we know. Oh, we know her fiance. This is one thing she says. She says, I'll pay you, Sherlock Holmes. I'll pay you, but I can't pay you right now. I'll pay you in a couple weeks when I get married, because then I'll have some money of my own. So her fiance doesn't believe she is in danger, though. Remember, she said, I have this feeling that I'm in danger, but I can't really explain it. And my fiance, the person I'm going to marry in a few weeks, doesn't believe me. And then we know Julia, her twin sister, Helen's twin, was killed. Oh, I don't want that bold. Well, we don't know she was killed, but she died 2 years ago. She died, so if you remember how this all unfolded, the girls were pretty sheltered. Dr. Roylott never really let them out of the house because here, actually, let me just draw a little bit. You have Mrs. Stoner's dead. You have General Stoner's dead. So then it's just Dr. Roylott taking care of these two daughters. He doesn't really let them out much, but every once in a while they get to go see their aunt, who lives in Harrow, a city, a couple hours away from London. And so Julia goes to visit this aunt, and while she's there, she meets somebody who she falls in love with, and then she's going to get married to them. And she comes back home, engaged to this guy, but her and Dr. Roylott start arguing a lot, and then it's just something happens, which is the next part of the story, where Julia dies. All right, so that's where we're at so far. On to part 2.